This is Charles Manson. Charles Manson is one of the most notorious criminals of the 20th century. His horrific crimes and those of his followers, the Manson family, shocked America and the rest of the world, and his name became synonymous with everything that was wrong with the 1960s in America and the hippie counterculture movement. The murder of Sharon Tate and several others that he was responsible for are some of the most infamous crimes in American history, and he and his followers received life sentences in prison, where some of them remain today. However, there is one mysterious death in London around the time of his crime spree that he has also been rumoured to have been involved with. Officially, the death has been ruled a suicide by the police and the coroner, but the nature of the wounds on the body and some odd statements by the local police have suggested that there may have been some foul play involved. In this video, we will look at the evidence and you can draw your own conclusions about Manson's involvement. This is the story of the London victim of Charles Manson. This is the story of the mysterious death of Joel Pugh. On the morning of the 1st of December 1969, a young man was found dead in a run-down hotel in Hammersmith, West London. The man was Joel Pugh, a 29-year-old native of Minnesota, and the hotel was the Talgarth Hotel, found here on the Talgarth Road, a major traffic artery into central London. Joel Pugh had been living at the hotel for several weeks and had demonstrated some odd behaviour during his time there. He had arrived in October that year and had been travelling around the world trying to get over a failed romantic relationship. He had been involved with a woman called Sandra Good. Sandra Good was the daughter of a wealthy businessman, and she and Pugh had been an item for a few years, having met in the mid-1960s. Joel was probably more invested in the relationship than she was, as she had fallen in with a crowd that he did not like. The crowd was the Manson family, and she'd fallen under the spell of the charismatic leader, Charles Manson. It was March 1968, and was still some time away from the crime spree that would make him one of the most notorious criminals in American history. Charles Manson had ambitions to be a musician. He mixed with a musical crowd, and had started a commune for him and his devoted followers, mostly young women, on an area of land known as Spahn Ranch. Sandra was very appealing to Manson to have as a follower. Not only was she young and attractive, she was also rich. She was being paid an allowance from a trust fund set up by her father of $2,000 a month, approximately $16,000 a month in 2023, and this would take care of the living expenses of Manson and his family. The murders of Sharon Tate, the heavily pregnant wife of filmmaker Roman Polanski, along with Abigail Folger, Steve Parent, Wojciech Frykowski, and Jay Sebring, occurred at an address in Cielo Drive, Los Angeles, on the 8th of August 1969. The members of the Manson family, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, who committed these murders, were instructed to do so by Charles Manson, who himself wasn't actually present at the crime scene. The motives for the murders have never been completely clear, but one theory is that Manson was angry at having been let down over a recording contract by a man called Terry Melcher, who had previously lived at the house. These murders are so horrific that I won't recount the details here. If you want to know more, feel free to do your own research. The following night, the 9th of August, the Manson family committed two further murders, a wealthy married couple, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. Again, I won't recount the details here, but they can be found elsewhere. It is notable that Manson himself never actually struck the fatal blow in any of the murders that the Manson family committed. He wasn't even present at the scene for the murders in Cielo Drive, but he certainly inspired and orchestrated the murders, and was therefore convicted for all of the crimes in 1971 and was sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2017, having served 46 years. The rest of the Manson family all received similar life sentences. So where does Joel Pugh fit in with all this? Joel Pugh disapproved of Sandra's involvement with the Manson family and tried many times to draw her away from them. If he had succeeded, this would have been financially devastating for the family, as they were heavily reliant upon the $2,000 a month her trust fund was paying out. Once it became clear to Pugh that Sandra would not leave the Manson family, he sank into a depression and decided to go travelling to get over his lost love. This was now towards the end of 1968. It was shortly after their breakup that Sandra discovered that she was pregnant and gave birth to a boy in September 1969 and named him Ivan Pugh, claiming that Joel was his father. It was after the Manson family murders that Pugh found himself in the Talgarth Hotel in October 1969. He originally checked in with a female companion, but she left after a couple of weeks. He was fairly reclusive during his stay there. Hotel staff remember him being in a depressed state and eating little food, spending most of the time in his room drinking coffee and smoking marijuana. On the morning of the 1st of December 1969, unable to get access to the room to clean it, the manager called the police, who broke down the door and found Pugh's body. With the reports of Pugh's depressed state of mind and being reclusive and known use of drugs, the police quickly came to the conclusion that it was a straightforward case of suicide, despite there being no suicide note left behind. As most members of the Manson cult, including Manson himself, had been arrested by now, prosecutors were preparing their cases, and they became suspicious of the nature of Joel Pugh's death. There are a number of details that arouse suspicion that all is not as it seems. Whilst Pugh's wrists had been slashed, a common example of a suicide attempt, his throat had also been slashed twice. Whilst his door was locked and had to be broken down, his room was on the ground floor and could easily be entered and exited by a window. Also, a male member of the Manson family was Bruce Davis. Davis was a close ally of Charles Manson and was generally regarded as his right-hand man, and was known to have spent some time in London in early to mid-1969, being involved with the Church of Scientology. Bruce Davis would be later convicted of 2 murders committed at the request of Charles Manson. At the time of Pugh's death, the Metropolitan Police were unaware of the connection between Joel Pugh, Sandra Good and Charles Manson. He raises the question, had Scotland Yard known of the connection, would their investigation into Joel Pugh's death have been more thorough? The prosecutors of the Manson family did request a deeper investigation of Pugh's death via Interpol, and Scotland Yard came back with this strange comment in a letter dated the 13th of May 1970. It has been established that Davis is recorded as embarking at London Airport for the United States on the 25th of April 1969 while holding US passport 612-2568. At this time, he gave his address as Dormup Cottage, Felbridge, Surrey. This address is owned by the Scientology movement and houses followers of this organisation. The local police are unable to give any information concerning Davis, but they understand he had visited our country more recently than April 1969. However, this is not borne out by official record. Was Davis sent back to London by Manson to assassinate Joel Pugh out of revenge for trying to take Sandra Good and her trust fund away from him? Did he finally track him down to the Talgarth Hotel in late 1969 and take care of him and try to make it look like a suicide? Did Manson think that Sandra's son was actually his son, and he was angry at his parental rights being taken away and given to Pugh, and wanted him off the scene permanently? It wouldn't be the first time he would send her follower to do his deeds. Manson didn't like to get involved directly himself with his crimes, and was known for taking petty revenge to extremes. Bruce Davis and Sandra Good were never convicted of the Tate LaBianca murders, as they were out of the country and in prison respectively at the time of the murders. Sandra Good would be convicted and imprisoned for other crimes connected to the Manson family, but was released from jail in 1985. Bruce Davis was convicted of 2 murders, Gary Hinman and Donald Shea, both also at the request of Charles Manson, and remains in jail to this day. Let me know in the comments if you think Joel Pugh's death was a straightforward suicide, or whether Charles Manson and Bruce Davis were involved. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out the other videos on the Offbeat London channel.